He found her tied to a fence post in the dead of winter, wrists bleeding, barely breathing, and 3 newborn girls lying in the snow at her feet. He didn't know her name. He didn't know who had done this. But in that moment he made a promise. They would live, even if it killed him. What he didn't know was that saving her life would start a war. Wyoming Territory, January 1877. Silas Granger froze in his saddle, not because of the wind, but because he'd heard it. A baby's cry. He swung down, scanning the trees. The trail ahead was untouched for days. He led his horse forward, boots sinking deep, the sound growing clearer. Then he saw her, a woman tied to a fence post with barbed wire, head drooping, skin torn and bleeding. At her feet lay 3 newborns. One whimpered weakly. The other 2 didn't move. He was at her side in seconds. Knife out, wire cut. She sagged into his arms, nearly weightless. The babies were colder still. No questions, no hesitation. He wrapped them all in his blanket, pressed the smallest against his chest, and mounted up with her in front of him, the children between them. They were barely alive, and he had only minutes to change that. In a land where the cold kills without mercy, he wasn't about to let it win. But the storm outside wasn't the only danger closing in. Silas burst through the cabin door. No fire, no heat, just cold air waiting to finish the job the wind had started. He laid the woman on a pile of quilts near the hearth, then went straight for the tinderbox. Sparks caught. Flames rose. The babies came next. He tucked them close to the heat, rubbing their tiny hands, checking for breath. Shallow but there. The smallest stirred. A good sign. Her head turned slightly, eyes half open, lips cracked. "Maribel," she whispered. "Silas," he replied, already wrapping strips of linen around her torn wrists. Her skin was ice, her breathing thin. One baby whimpered. He scooped her up, feeding her sips of warm goat's milk from a carved spoon. Then the next. Then the third. By the time he pulled the blankets tight around them, some color had returned to their faces. He glanced at her, pale, battered, but watching him now. "Your girls," he said quietly, "are the only thing worth feeding." She didn't answer, but the way her eyes softened told him she'd heard every word. She'd been left to die, but not on his land. And soon he'd learn why. For a long time, the only sounds were the fire and the baby's breathing. Then Maribel spoke. "I was 17 when I married Joseph Quinn. He was 34. Rich, respected. My father said I was lucky." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "The first daughter," he frowned. "The second, he stopped speaking to me. The third," she glanced at the infants by the fire. "He called me cursed. Said I was no better than a mule if I couldn't give him a son." Her hand trembled, finding the scar along her jaw. "That night he beat me, then dragged me to the fence post. Said if the snow took me, it was God's will. Called it justice." Silas said nothing. His knife moved slowly across the whetstone, the edge catching the light. But his jaw was tight. His eyes were fixed on hers. And in that silence the choice was made. He wasn't just hearing her story. He was making a promise. She would not go back. But Joseph Quinn wasn't the kind of man to let go. By mid-morning, a knock hit the cabin door, quick, sharp, urgent. Hattie stepped in, cheeks red from the ride, shawl heavy with snow. "It's about her," she said, nodding toward Maribel. "Joseph Quinn's telling folks she's unstable. Says the babies are his, and she's hiding them against the law. He's got 4 men riding hard to bring her back." Silas didn't answer. He just crossed to the window, scanning the tree line. The rest of the day, he worked without pause. Reinforced the door with a second bar. Checked the window latches. Stacked firewood high beside the hearth. Moved supplies to the root cellar. By dusk, the air changed. Too quiet. Then hooves. For sets. Silas stepped outside. Snow swirled between him and the riders. Their leader, a scarred man with a revolver, reined in. "That woman belongs to Joseph Quinn," he called. "And so do those girls." Silas stood in the snow, unarmed, unmoving. "She was never his," he said flatly. "And she sure as hell ain't yours." They stared at him for a long moment, then turned their horses. They rode away, but promised to return. Weeks passed. No sign of the riders. No knock at the door. The cabin changed. Not just warmer from the fire, but warmer in the way the air felt. The girls grew stronger, cheeks fuller, voices louder. One by one, Silas carved their names into small cedar plaques and hung them above their sleeping place. Eloise, Ruth, June. Maribel began to move with purpose again. She sang at night, soft lullabies that filled the room, like smoke from a hearth. Silas never joined in, but he always listened. Sometimes she caught him watching her, not in pity, not in judgment, but in a way that said he was seeing something new, something worth keeping. They spoke little, yet the silences between them felt full, like they already knew the words that didn't need saying. Sometimes, silence says more than words, but outside those walls, the snow still lay heavy on the ridge, and winter wasn't done with them yet. The storm came fast. One moment, stillness. The next, wind screaming against the walls, snow slashing sideways. Silas moved to the window, brushed away the frost, and froze. 3 riders, cloaks drawn tight, forcing their way through the whiteout. Joseph had found them. He turned to Maribel, voice low and urgent. "Take the girls. Follow the creek. Stay low. Don't stop. And don't come back without the law." Her eyes widened. "What about you?" "I'll lead them away." In minutes, he had her wrapped in the elk fur cloak, a satchel of food in her hand, and a small blade pressed into her palm. "If they catch you, don't hesitate." She slipped out the back, the girls bundled against her. Silas went to work. He tied a coat to a fence post, lit an oil lamp to throw moving shadows, and left his horse down the southern trail, all to pull the riders off the true path. If they wanted her, they'd have to get through him. But she wasn't the only one planning to fight back. The knock came, hard enough to shake the cabin. Silas opened the door. Joseph Quinn stood there, snow on his coat, gun at his side, eyes colder than the storm. "She took what's mine," Joseph said. "The girls carry my name. Hand them over." Silas stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "She was never yours," he said evenly. "And she sure as hell ain't now." Joseph's jaw tightened. He drew his pistol. Silas didn't flinch. A shadow moved. One of Joseph's men swung the butt of a rifle. The blow sent Silas crashing into the doorframe, blood blooming through his shirt. Then, another voice cut through the storm. "Drop it." The sheriff rode up, flanked by 2 deputies. Behind them, Maribel. Her face was raw from the cold, but her eyes burned steady. "Tell them what you did," she said to Joseph, "or I will." Joseph froze, but the sheriff didn't. "Arrest him." The deputies had all 3 men in irons before the words were cold. Justice was rare in the territory, but not impossible. The fight was over, but the story wasn't. Silas healed slowly, but he healed. The bruises faded, the shoulder mended, and the cabin became something more. They rebuilt it together, stronger walls, a bigger hearth, space for travelers riding the mountain trails. Word spread fast. Hot stew and a safe bed at Granger Ridge. The girls thrived. Eloise walked first. Ruth spoke first. June laughed first, a laugh that could melt frost. One evening, after the last guest had gone, Maribel stood beside Silas on the porch. The valley lay gold in the sunset. The girls played in the yard, chasing each other barefoot through the grass. "You chose us," she said quietly, "when you could have walked away." He didn't answer with words. He just took her hand. No rings, no priest, just a promise, unspoken but unshakable. Some homes are built from timber and stone, others from something stronger. They sat like that until the sun slipped behind the ridge. The laughter of 3 little girls wrapped around them like a blanket. And on that mountain, where winter once tried to take them, love stayed.